much are you buying petrol? Now, I hear some people are buying in the region of 1,300, 1,500 naira per liter. How is that even possible? A country that makes crude oil. Not only is petrol unaffordable to the populace, it is now scarce. How is this even happening? And that's what we are looking at right now on Straight to the Point. How did we get to this point? And are there any possible solutions? If they are, we'll find them. So I hear some people can't even go to work because not only is petrol unavailable, it is so expensive to access. And let's even talk about how that has affected the price of every commodity. This is Nigeria. Petrol should be as accessible and as affordable as you can think of. But time after time, day after day, week after week, it is one petrol price hike wahala. And right now, I actually have the right person to have this conversation. He is a public affairs analyst, and this is right up his alley. Welcome, Martin Obuna.
Thank you for having me.
Martin, what is going on seriously? I mean, I would say a lot of people can't really make sense of what's happening. So in a layman's term, like the simplest English you sabi speak up, why in the world is there fuel scarcity at this point, and why are we buying it for so much at this time?
So I think we need to go back and roll back because if you rightly said how much we were buying fuel 3 years ago and how much fuel is being sold now, over 1,000% increment actually.
Yes, actually it's 1,000% increment.
And it started first of all by the president's knee-jerk approach by just saying subsidy is gone on the 29th of May 2023 when he was sworn in. And the major concern is that fuel subsidy was removed without thinking it through. Whether or not it was a slip of tongue and he was thinking he was still in his activist mode or as an opposition leader when he said subsidy is gone. The words of the president are usually law. So when a president says something, it becomes binding. And so the moment he made that proclamation, it was law. And there were queues all over the country. People were scrambling to get fuel and all that. And the marketers who had fuel stored in their tanks refused to sell until they saw the next day where they can now make more profit from whatever the new price regime was going to be. But the question then is, as a leader, if you make a mistake, is it right for you to continue living in your mistake and in your dreams of mistake?
You believe he made a mistake?
That's a mistake. It wasn't part of the presidential speech. Go back and look at it.
I saw that.
That wasn't part of the presidential speech to remove subsidy. It wasn't. I am close to some of his aides, and it wasn't.
Then what could have led him to make that kind of proclamation on his first day on the job, or first seconds
he
on
was
the job?
high on power. He was high in power, or power drunk, perhaps. Or the only thing that can explain that could be the fact that the president was still assuming that he was in opposition and he just wanted to say something to excite the people or to give people, especially the international community, to make them feel like he has something to offer. But at the end of the day, we've all come to the realization that it wasn't a plan that was thought through and he made a terrible mistake. And the best thing to do would have just been, I am sorry,
Don't even say I'm sorry. Just say, you know what, we've thought about it and right now we can't do it.
There's nothing wrong with saying I'm sorry as a leader, as a parent, as anybody. You will all make mistakes. You're human. That is what makes you human. You're not infallible because you became president overnight. You can make mistakes. So if you make mistakes and you hurt people by your mistakes, people you claim to care for and govern, the most responsible thing for you to do would be to apologize and reverse whatever decision you made from wherever you made that decision. And then let things roll back to the way they were before. And then have a well thought out plan. Nobody is saying, if you want to remove subsidy, you became president, so you can do whatever you like. If you still insist on removing fuel subsidy, which you literally campaigned against, fought against, sponsored people against, if you think it is very important for you to remove it, then you must have a thought out plan to say, hey, let all the local refineries work, for example. Let's empower the Cardinal refinery. Let's get the Port Harcourt refinery working, the Dangote refinery. Create an enabling environment for enough competitiveness for private sector driven refineries, so that we can just take crude from wherever crude is in Oloribiri, for example, or wherever there is crude, and just drive it there, refine it, sell it locally to the people, and then we have petrol sold even at lesser amounts from when you met petrol pump prices.
Could you explain this fuel subsidy removal to an average Nigerian who really doesn't understand this concept of fuel subsidy and then what its removal was meant to do?
I don't know how to explain foolishness, to be honest, but I'll try to find a way to just try to, because it doesn't make sense. One, we have local products, which is crude oil. We have it in abundance in Nigeria. And then we claim we don't have refineries that are working in Nigeria, and we cannot fix our refineries, despite the fact that government puts in a lot of money for turnaround maintenance of these refineries. Billions of naira is budgeted every year for the Cardinal refinery, for the Port Harcourt refinery. And people are being paid salaries. Directors or managers, they have their cars changed year in, year out, and the refinery is not working, although refineries are not working. However, government still takes this money, this crude oil, out and sells it to NNPC, and then NNPC takes the fuel out, the crude oil out to refine it. Now, look at the entire process where you have crude oil. So it's like you have rice and beans in your house, and you want to serve your children, you want to raw rice and beans, and you want to make jollof rice and beans, for example, for your children at home. And then you have stove or gas cooker, or you have firewood, and you just say, okay, you know what? Maybe there is no ropes. There are no ropes, or there is no lighter to light whatever I want to use to make the fire that I want to use to make the food. And then you decide to take it to your mother in the village, who has firewood and who has lighter, to then help you cook that rice. Mind you are in Abuja. And then consider the cost of transportation.
To my mom in the village.
To your mom in the village. And you get to the village. Consider the time wasted. And how hungry your children will be. And all whatnot. And then you go to the village to cook your food and then bring it back.
To serve my kids here in Abuja.
To serve your kids here in Abuja. That is the simple, that's why I say I don't know how to explain foolishness and stupidity. Because this is a clear example of what happens with fuel subsidy in Nigeria. So you have crude oil in your backyard, in your house, and then you have everything that you can actually use to refine that crude to become PMS or AGO and the byproducts, fertilizer and the rest. And mind you, when we refine crude, there are different stages of refining. So you also have fertilizer, you also have different byproducts of petrol. All this, most of the time, are lost.
Yes, they are lost. All we concentrate on is AGO and PMS. Basically, that's just it.
So there's a lot of byproduct gums, many things that you can get out of crude oil, but we just go take these things out there and bring them back at a different cost. Now, going back to the entire process of explaining fuel subsidy. Fuel subsidy. Now, when you take that out, you then experience a lot of high cost of bringing it back. Now, that is what the marketers are referring to as landing costs. Currently, there are conversations around whether or not the landing cost of petrol in Nigeria is actually less than 1,000 naira, which is why there is a conversation around whether government is still subsidizing petroleum motor spirits or not. Because the landing cost of petroleum motor spirit from the marketers who then bring the fuel in is about 1,000, let's say 1,050 to 1,700 naira. And so that's why a lot of people still believe that despite the pronouncement of the president that fuel subsidy is gone. The government is still subsidizing the rest of that, and that's why we were having fuel sold to us at 600 and 700, as the case may be, and 1,000 in other places. Now, it seems like there is no longer
Any
that
sort of subsidy at all.
at all. But there is still some level of subsidization still ongoing, because if the petrol is sold to you at 1,000 naira, what happens to the rest of the money? Because yesterday I bought at 950, right? So the question is that the real thing is about leadership. There's nothing wrong with us as a people. Nigerians, we are okay, we are good people, we are everything. The problem is, how does somebody wake up one morning and make a decision that will affect over 200 million people and neighboring countries?
And here's the rather interesting thing, because I keep asking this question. Why do we even have to take this fuel out? Why not just invest money in the refineries? Because for all the money that is required to take this crude oil outside of the country, have it refined, come back in, pay your subsidy and all of that, we could have fixed all of the refineries, had fuel refined or crude oil refined here, and we could be like Saudi Arabia, where petrol would be cheaper than water, because we have these things. So when they now remove this subsidy, meanwhile, there's always this question of who receives all the money from the subsidy? Because, there's this controversy about it. Where does the subsidy money go to anyways?
So the subsidy money usually is an interesting question, and that's where the corruption really is, because there's a lot of kickbacks going on, between governments, NNPC, the market, and the marketers. So the marketers say we bring in fuel, they do whatever they want to do, and they then come and tell you we bring in fuel at X amount of money, and then you have to pay us for this X amount of money that we have all agreed that we're going to sell. And then the government doesn't have so much disagreement or argument around it, and just pays them the difference that is on it, and then says, okay, go and sell the rest to the Nigerian people. Now, that's where the corruption, and the corruption is bigger than we actually think it is. Subsidy removal, and the people who benefit from subsidy removal are the marketers, and then the corruption goes back and trickles down to the government officials who are involved in the entire scam. So they bring in petrol and say, this is how much petrol is, or this is how much we bought it. And they all agree as the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, and this is how much it is, right? Then the government pays the subsidy that is on top and says, supply this. Now they go back and get kickbacks from these people to say, okay, give us back our money and give us back our share. Not just that, there's also the financial sector corruption also that is involved. So for example, some of the independent marketers are crying that they cannot access loans because of the high interest rates.
Yes, of
so
course.
The CBN interest rate is pegged at about 24% or thereabouts. But then, if you're coming to borrow money from a bank, for example,
if the cost of fund is 24%, how much am I going to borrow? Because I'm going to have to make some money off it.
Somewhere. If I come to the bank to say I want to loan money because I want to do maybe
Diesel
produce,
business
produce maybe these cameras, for example.
Okay.
My interest rate is going to be different from the person who comes as an oil marketer.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Why?
To get oil, because you're in oil and gas business, right? It's more lucrative. And then they give you at about 35%, because the bank will also, the bank pegs their interest rate at different level, different amount from what the CBN gives to them. So the CBN says do 24%, but they might add 10%, 34%. So when it comes to different people who are coming to access the loans, they also increase the level of the interest that they are going to give to them and say, okay, give us at 40, 35%, 50%, as the case may be. So the marketers are now like saying, come on, we can't do this because maybe we can't access loans. And so it's also affecting, and it's one of the major concerns about the scarcity of petrol that we already have.
Because I was really getting to that point. Okay, so we have paid the subsidy. It is now expensive, but why is it still scarce at the same time? If we're paying more for it, at least let it be available. I'm not saying that's even a better idea, but if we're paying more for it, why can't even see to buy? You say that we're paying too much.
So so
You know, every
it's
time you take a deep breath to answer a question, I realize how complex this conversation is. Because let me be honest with you, every person I've had this conversation with finds it hard to even piece out what the issues are because it's so complex, it's so intertwined, but so simple at the same time.
I just like what you just said because it's so simple. Because so when things are supposed to be plain and easy, and then you make them complicated, it's like when you hear government start speaking big English back in the day. Just know that they want to steal money. So that is what is happening now, because it's a simple issue. Give these people, and Nigeria is our main everything is on petroleum.
Yes.
Everything.
Fear, of course, price of Gary will go up, price of transportation will go up, price of everything will go up. When you get to everything is bordered on petrol, the price of petrol. And yet we seem to have a government that doesn't understand, or do they not care about this correlation?
I don't think government is not the question of whether government understands or not. Government totally and absolutely understands. The
They
only
just don't
problem
care.
is that they just don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care. I mean, a government that cares about you would put you into so much suffering, but be living a very lavish and expensive lifestyle. What's that? The government that cares about you will be more concerned about buying private jets and buying yachts and building vice president's offices or houses, or expending so much money for the office of the first lady's travels and trips. That's not a government that cares about you, not at all. And a government that cares about you would rather, okay, so for example, we are making more money right now. There's a lot of money in the system because subsidy is gone. But how does that trickle down to you? They feed you with rice.
That's another one.
So you have flood, they put rice in your mouth. You have your people are protesting, they put rice in your mouth. Children cannot go to school. Boko Haram kidnaps people, they put rice. So that's the only language that they understand, or they think, oh, you're hungry. So everything is about rice. They don't even give you stew.
Oh, goodness gracious. Like I said, this conversation is very simple yet very complex. Please, we want to hear your thoughts on the comment section. How much are you buying fuel? A liter of petrol. How much are you paying? Where are you? How much are you paying for it? Please, we want to know. And while you're at it, please subscribe to this channel because we have hard conversations in the easiest way that you can understand it.
You've got to be a very wicked person to increase fuel the way Tinubu increased fuel. I must actually say this in a very, very clear and unambiguous way. Like, people are hungry. There is a lot of suffering going on in the land, and you are obstinate about it. People protest, and then you go arrest them. Minors, you lock them up, charge them with treason.
Is there some aspect of the blame that we have to take? Because it seems as if
We
Nigerians
are very docile people,
Very docile.
and that is the problem.
Very
And
docile.
imagine that I have never seen a thing like this in my life before.
like we're coping. Why? I don't know about you, but I'm not coping.
Imagine, with 1,000 naira, you can't even buy fuel in stations.